Again, Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 5. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? Again, the question is asked by the daughters of Jerusalem. It's an expression of wonder and astonishment. The tone of the question is indicative of the fact that this woman was viewed as strange, beyond the usual, beyond the norm. She's mystifying to the world. From the question, as we've already seen, we see the direction of this woman. She cometh up. She cometh up from, introducing the place she's leaving, the wilderness. And again, this is present tense. Not something she does every now and then, but it's describing her life. She's ascending. She's rising above the woman, the wilderness. And this needs to be us. Needs to be us as individuals. Needs to be us collectively as a church. She's different in her character. She's different in the direction that she's moving. She's different in life. Again, the question paints a word picture of what the ongoing life of the church of the Lord Jesus Christ and the life of an individual child of God should be. In this message, we want to notice some characteristics that enabled her to rise above the wilderness. You can't just try. You can't just make up your mind that you're going to come up from the wilderness. There's some characteristics that you have to have. And if you have these characteristics, it'll happen. You'll just find yourself coming up from the wilderness. So I want to speak on how to have a life of ascending out of the wilderness. Again, hear the question. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness? That needs to be us. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness? This woman viewed Christ as the love of her life. Again, if we take the man in the Song of Solomon to be Christ, she viewed Christ as the love of her life. She's distinct from the wilderness. Her direction is astonishing to the world. And the foundation and the root of her distinctness and her direction is seen in the words, her beloved. Her beloved. They recognized that she was coming up out of the wilderness, but they also knew something about her beloved. Her beloved. She spoke of him. She addressed him as such throughout the book. In chapter 1, verse 13, she refers to him as her well-beloved. Chapter 1, verse 14, my beloved. Chapter 1, verse 16, again, my beloved. Chapter 2, verse 3, again, my beloved. Chapter 2, verse 8, again, my beloved. Chapter 2, verse 9, my beloved. Chapter 2, verse 10, my beloved. Chapter 2, verse 16, my beloved. Chapter 2, verse 17, my beloved. Chapter 4, verse 16, my beloved. So she refers to him in that way throughout the book. In chapter 5, verse 2, verse 4, verse 5, verse 6, verse 8, verse 10, verse 16, she refers to him as my beloved. Doesn't call him by name, just my beloved. Chapter 6, verses 2 and 3, my beloved. Chapter 7, verse 10, verse 11, verse 13, my beloved. Chapter 8, verse 14, my beloved. 23 times in Song of Solomon she refers to him as my beloved. 3 times she refers to him as my love. She also refers to him as well-beloved, my beloved, my love. Those words reveal that he was real to her. They reveal that she had a love for him. My well-beloved, my beloved, my love. In all of that, there is a relationship with him. In chapter 1, verse 7, she says, O thou whom my soul loveth. Chapter 3, verse 1, again, whom my soul loveth. Chapter 3, verse 2, whom my soul loveth. Verse 3, my soul loveth. Verse 4, whom my soul loveth. She loved him with her soul. It was a love that reached the inner depths of her being. That is, it is a love that controlled her heart, her mind, her will, her life. There's nothing shallow about her love to him. It is a love that consumes her heart, her mind, her will, and her life. And if we're going to be rising above and coming up from the wilderness, this must be so. We must have a love for him that reaches deep into our souls, the inner depths of our being. Again, O thou whom my soul loveth, my well-beloved, my beloved, my love. In all of those, there's no hint of uncertainty. She loves him. She knows she loves him. There's no uncertainty about that. It was a love that was absolutely certain. No question. No doubt concerning her love for him. And if we're going to be rising above this wilderness, our love for him must be absolutely certain. It must enter the inner depths of our being, and it must be certain. Again, O thou whom my soul loveth, my well-beloved, my beloved, my love. There's emotion in each one of those. Her love for him did not leave her emotionally detached from him. There's an emotion filled with love, not merely words of love. And if we're going to be rising above the wilderness of this world, again, our love for him must consume our heart, our mind, and our life. Again, O thou whom my soul loveth, my well-beloved, my beloved, my love. Her love to him was in terms of personal relationship. personal experience. She personally experiences Him. Chapter 1, verse 14, she said, "My beloved is unto me." There's a personal experience there. Chapter 2, verse 8, she says, "The voice of my beloved." Again, there's a personal experience. Chapter 2, verse 10, "My beloved spake and said unto me." There's personal experience of Him. Chapter 2, verse 16, she said, "My beloved is mine, and I am His." Again, personal experience. Chapter 5, verse 2, "The voice of my beloved knocketh." Chapter 5, verse 4, "My beloved put his hand by the hole of the door." She's reflecting upon personal experience. Chapter 6, verse 3, "I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine." Chapter 7, verse 10, "I am my beloved, and his desire is toward me." What he desires, I desire, because I love him. And if we're going to be rising above the wilderness of this world, it must be a love that involves a personal experience, a personal relationship with Christ. O thou whom my soul loveth, my well-beloved, my beloved, my love. Her love for Him was fervent. Her love for Him was intense. And so it must be if we're going to be rising above this wilderness. Again, you can't just leave here and say, "You know what, I'm going to start coming out of the wilderness." It's not going to work. There has to be this love that propels us out of the wilderness. It's a love that cannot be contained. It can't be contained. O thou whom my soul loveth, my well-beloved, my beloved, my love. When she spoke those words, she was stating the priority of her life. The wilderness is not the priority of her life. He's the priority of her life. In other words, it was a love that exceeded all others. And therefore, He was the center of her interest. He was the focal point, and He was the meaning of her life. This wilderness is not our focal point. It's not what gives our life meaning. What gives our life meaning is Him. Her motives, her purposes, her viewpoints, her goals, her desires, her pursuits were all defined by her love for Him. And if we are going to be rising above the wilderness of this world, our love for Him must cause Him to be the priority of our life. O thou whom my soul loveth, my well-beloved, my beloved, my love. Notice her love for Him identified herself with Him. She's not ashamed. She's not ashamed of Him. She willingly identifies herself with Him. Again, hear her say in chapter 2, verse 16, "My beloved is mine, and I am His." My beloved is mine, and I am His. Again, these are pictures of many things. I've been tempted many times to preach through I've preached through Song of Solomon many times, but to do it just based on marriage. There's a lot of lessons here to be learned. But my beloved is mine and I am his. There's a link. There's a bond. There's an attachment between them. There's a spirit of togetherness. There's common ground. There's an agreement between them. And if we're going to be rising above the wills of the world, our love for Him must want to be identified with Him. Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed of the one who saved your soul. Don't be ashamed to identify yourself with Him. Her love for Him was public. Chapter 3, verse 3, she said to the watchman, "Saw ye Him whom my soul loveth?" Have you seen Him who I love? She wasn't afraid to let the watchman know that she loved him. Chapter 5, verse 8, she said to the daughters of Jerusalem, "If ye find my beloved, if you find my beloved." Also to the daughters of Jerusalem, she referred to Him in their hearing as my love. Chapter 2, verse 7, chapter 3, verse 5, chapter 8, verse 4. She was unashamed. She was uninhibited to declare her love to Him, to others, for Him, to others. In other words, it was a love that was openly manifested. Everybody knew. She loved Him. They knew that by what she said. They knew that by how she lived. If we're going to be rising above the wilderness of this world, our love to Him must be our testimony for life. Her love for Him was one of friendship. We hear her say in chapter 5, verse 16, "This is my beloved, and this is my friend." This is my beloved, and this is my friend. Best friend you have in life should be your spouse. But the best friend ever is the Lord. A friend of the closest kind. This is my friend. If we're going to be rising above the wilderness of the world, it must be a love that makes Him our closest friend. The people say, "Well, I can't leave. I've got too many friends in the wilderness." Hopefully you've got a friend that's closer than all your friends in the wilderness. And that won't be a problem. Coming up out of the wilderness. I've got a lot of friends, but I've only got one friend that saved my soul. Only one. Only one. Our love for Him must make Him our friend. Her love for Him made Him the desire of her life. She was persuaded that He was the best. Chapter 2, verse 3, we hear her say, "As the apple tree among the trees of the woods, so is my beloved among the sons." In other words, He's the best. He's the best. And if you really believe that, then you don't have to go further in the wilderness looking for something better. He's the best. Chapter 5, verse 9, the daughters of Jerusalem asked her, "What is thy beloved more than another?" And she began her description of Him. And she said, "He's the chiefest among 10,000. That's where she began. She said, "He's the best." In chapter 5, verse 16, she says, "He's altogether lovely." And she gives a description of Him. If we're going to be rising above the mess of this world, our love for Him must persuade us He's the best. There's nothing better. There's no one better. The foundational reason that she is ascending from the wilderness is that He is the love of her life. And it is a love that is stronger than the pullings and the allurements of the wilderness. Yes, the world has strong pullings. There's allurements. We must have a love that is stronger than the pullings and the allurements of the world. A love for Him. And reading through Song of Solomon, she was very, very aware of His person. She had, as we've already said, life experiences of Him. And she's experiencing Him every day. And as a result, she's coming up from the wilderness. Another thing that brought her up out of the wilderness is she walked with Him. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness leaning upon her beloved? In order for her to lean, they have to be walking together. He can't be behind her, he can't be in front of her. They're walking together. That means accordance with one another. That means agreement with Him. And if we're going to be coming up from the mess of this world, there must be agreement with the Lord. Full agreement with the Lord. She's walking with Him. That's fellowship with Him. They're moving in the same direction. If we're going to be rising above the mess of the world, we must be moving in the same direction as the Lord. Have to be. Wherever He's going, she's going. The truth is, He's escorting her up from the wilderness. Walking with Him results in being escorted from the wilderness. And there's a third thing. Her posture. She's leaning upon her beloved. This implies several things that are necessary for us to be ascending from the wilderness. She's leaning upon her beloved. He's reality to her. I wouldn't suggest that you lean upon something that you imagine is there. You better make sure it's there. It's reality. You cannot lean upon that which is not real. Throughout the book, she mentions His mouth, His voice, His chambers, His table, His shadow, His banner, His left hand, His right hand, His bed, His thigh, His heart, His head, His locks, His eyes, His cheeks, His lips, His legs, His countenance. She mentions His garden. She mentions His desires. He was reality in her life. She had a personal knowledge of Him. She knew Him well. She had personal experience of Him. And if we're going to be rising above the wilderness of this world, He's got to be more than a point of doctrine. Doctrine's important. We need to be accurate in our doctrine. But doctrine will not bring you up from the wilderness. A personal knowledge and experience of Him will. She knew Him. He was real. She's living in the awareness of His presence. His presence can't just be something we've heard about. It has to be real to us if we're going to be coming up from the wilderness. The fact that she leaned upon Him means that she was conscious of her own weakness and very aware of His strength. She knew that she could lean her weight upon Him. There's no doubt in her mind. We must know that. Leaning upon her beloved. That's a position of confidence in her beloved. That's a position of dependence upon her beloved. She's leaning upon her beloved. Perhaps because she knew the journey is long. The journey's perilous. The journey's difficult. And she's weak. So she leans upon her beloved. That's you and I with the Lord. Leaning upon her beloved. She's strengthening herself in Him. That's how you rise above the wilderness. You must draw strength from Him. She's experiencing His sustaining and keeping power. She's experiencing His help. You don't have to come out of the wilderness on your own strength. You can't. You depend on His help. And you lean. And if we're going to be rising above this world, all these things must be so. She's near Him. She's leaning upon her beloved. She's near Him. Again, from here, I can't lean on that wall. If I'm going to lean on that wall, I've got to get closer. So it is with the Lord. You got to get close to lean. And she's leaning upon her beloved. So she's close to Him. She's cast herself upon Him. She's joined to Him. She's been drawn to Him. What drew her to Him was her love for Him, His love for her. She's drawn to Him. What are we drawn to? Are we drawn to the wilderness? Or are we drawn to Him? She's sensitive to Him. What are we more sensitive to? Him or the wilderness? She's committed to Him. She's surrendered to Him. She's actually being controlled and dominated by Him. If we're going to be rising above this world, this must be so. She's leaning upon her beloved. He has a continuous impact upon her life. So who is this that comes up from the wilderness leaning upon her beloved? Again, it's indicative of the fact that He is real to her. She's aware of His presence. She's conscious of her weakness. She's aware of His strength. And she's confident. Confident enough to depend upon Him. strengthening herself in Him. She's close to Him. And all of this is regardless of time, condition, place, situation, or circumstance. And she's rising above. In closing, the question is asked, who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? They noticed that she was different. Who is this? And they also noticed that she was ascending, cometh up from the wilderness. They also noticed that she had confidence and she was depending upon Him. She's leaning. But they noticed also her love for Him, her beloved. That should be our testimony, our beloved. They couldn't help but notice Him. When they saw her, they saw Him. That needs to be so. They noticed her, they noticed Him. What a testimony she had. And this is so, of each individual member, as it is so of each individual member, so it is so of the church. We need to ask ourselves, how much does my life contribute to this as a picture of this church? How much does my life contribute to that? People will say, I wish the church was this. I wish it was that. I wish it was this. Well, why don't you be that person? It's not that difficult. We do not have to live our lives chained to the wilderness. We do not have to live our lives defined by the waste and the dysfunction and the ruin that is all around us. There is a way to rise above, and that is what we see here in Song of Solomon 8, chapter 8, verse 5. We do not have to live life discouraged and sinking in despondency. We can be coming up from the wilderness. And that ought to be so of us as individuals. It ought to be so of us as a church. Every individual life is moving in some direction. Every church is moving in some direction. And may this be it. Cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved. Brother Dave, if you'd come and lead us